Rotary Club of Warren County. And I'm on the district training team. We also have for the district training team, Nina Beth Thornton, who's on. She's the chair of the team, and we'll be the monitors for this session. This session is on youth services and youth protection, and your presenters today will first be Brett Herbeck. Brett is the past president of the Front Royal Club. He is the chair of the district youth services. He chaired the Youth and Peace in Action program we had this year. He does the Interact group. And for those of you who are not at district conference this past weekend, he received the Dave Moorman Encouraging Youth Award from District Governor Tara for all of what he has done with our youth program. So congratulations, Brett, and thank you for being our presenter tonight.
Thank you.
We also have with us Mark Fennick. Mark is a past president of the Marion Club, and he's currently the area governor for Area 11. And starting July 1, he will be the youth protection officer for the district, and he'll be going over youth protection guidelines for all clubs who have anything to do with youth programs. So just a couple of housekeeping things. Please put yourself on mute, so we don't have any distracting background noise. It's always helpful if you could put your view option in the speaker view. It's easier to see the slides on there as well. If you have a question, please enter it into the chat or raise your hand. And Nina Beth and I will be monitoring that and get your questions in. And then at the very end, we'll open it up for any additional questions there may be. All right, with that, Brett, I'm going to turn it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. So, yeah, I really appreciate the honor this past weekend. I can't say that I can echo what our Saturday morning speaker who received that award from her district, that I do actually like our youth, and I do like youth. She said, I don't know why I got this award. I don't even like youth, not even my own kid. No. But it is an honor to do this. And just so you know, this is how much I love youth and my own kids. Warren County High School, where my kids go to school, does not have a turf soccer field. Parkview High School does in Sterling, Virginia. So earlier on Monday, because of this rain, they announced they were switching, without consulting me and knowing where my calendar was, switching the games to Parkview. So I'm sitting in a Wendy's parking lot in my car right now, so I can scoot over to their soccer games when I complete this. But I did want to be here with you. And lastly, before I get started, Melanie Hamill, I just saw her join, and a big shout out and a thank you to Melanie. She got up at like probably around 3:30 or 4 o'clock in the morning, Saturday morning, to ride the bus down with our youth from Winchester, picking up kids along the way so they could attend the youth conference on Saturday, which we had great feedback on. And thank you, Melanie. I know it was an incredibly long day for you, and I really do appreciate it, because we couldn't have done it without a volunteer. So let's go ahead and get started. So we're going to start off first with some things about the youth programming, and then I'm going to turn it over to Mark. And Mark, isn't it wonderful to have a training that everybody's required to attend, that we get to have so many people be on here to speak? But I want to start with the why. Why youth? And I go back to this. Simon Sinek is one of my favorite speakers, TED Talk kind of people. And he says, start with why. So I think the why, a real practical reason why we want to concentrate on youth for Rotary is to create new Rotarians. I mean, we need to be able to grow this organization. We hear over and over again, each one bring one, how we've been stagnant in our membership. Well, we need to bring in new members as our older members pass or move on from Rotary. The other reason, though, I think is so important and vital that we concentrate and we do a great job in this district on our youth is this great quote that I love by Hannah Arendt. And she says, every generation, civilization is invaded by barbarians. We call them children. And what she means by that is we're bringing in these uncivilized beasts that all they want to do is eat and fight and play and just all the basic instincts that people have. And our job as parents and adults and as Rotarians is to civilize them and to bring them into our society and teach them the ways that we're supposed to act towards each other and to provide service to one another instead of being takers all the time, to be givers and to share our gifts. So I think that's the why, the practical why and the real why of what Rotary, the mission of Rotary is to civilize these folks and bring them into the conversation of adults. So we're going to go over advocates, interact, RILA. We're going to go over all of these things that our district is involved with. So first of all, each of your areas should have a youth advocate. Now, I don't have youth advocates for all of our areas. So if you're in an area that you can go on DACDB and just check it out and see who your youth advocate is. And if you see an empty spot and you want to be that person, raise your hand, send me an email. I'd love to have somebody that's in your area to be the youth advocate. And really all that person's job is to communicate between me and the district and your clubs in your area to make sure that they know when RILA is going on, if we have what's going on with the Interact clubs, youth conferences, scholarships, all the different opportunities of our youth. The advocate is there to make sure that that's happening in that area, in your area. So please reach out to that youth advocate, area leaders, area governors. If you're on the call today, please invite those youth advocates occasionally to your area meetings so that they can share that information that's going on with your club presidents. The first program I want to address is Early Act. Early Act is not a Rotary International program. It is a district level program. This is a program that I first heard about several years ago, maybe 4 years ago at district conference. I think Kathy and Ron introduced it to the conference, as well as our Rotary board member who was there at the time. He mentioned it. And I wanted to find out more about it and bring it to the district. So we did our first Early Act club in our district was at Hilda J. Barber Elementary School in Front Royal, Virginia, which is where my kids go to school. And then we have one at two other schools in Warren County. Our club sponsors two, and the Warren County Club, I see Mike Williams here. Their club sponsors one. Early Act is for those elementary school kids. It's district-based. And there's a lot of freedom. Some clubs are going to be the whole school. Some of them are going to be K through 5. Some of them are going to be just 4th to 5th graders. The faculty advisor and the Rotarian that's in charge is really going to be able to make a program for those elementary school kids for what they want and what those elementary school kids need. And you can put a big focus on the kids in the school and learning how to do service in the school. So doing projects around the school, learning the 4-way test, those kind of things that the kids at the Early Act level, the elementary school level will enjoy doing. So some of the projects our clubs have done are, writing cards at Christmas time or the holidays to our nursing home residents, doing things for troops, sending gift baskets there. Going around and picking up garbage at their school. So different things like that that is pretty basic for an elementary school kid, but gets them engaged. It could be during school or after school, but that's what the Early Act program is. Interact, this is the middle school and high school age. Interact, essentially, it is a Rotary club at those levels. We have had COVID, just like in every other area. COVID is taking a big fist and smashed many and closed many of our Interact clubs throughout the district, as well as around the world and the country, which is sad. This has not been the priority for a lot of our faculty members who are trying to get back into the classroom regularly. It has also not been a priority of some of our clubs who are just trying to get back to normal programming. So this is a program that has been pushed off to the sides a bit. So I do encourage you, if you're interested in the youth aspect and you want to get involved, go and talk to your club president, find the principal at one of the high schools or middle schools, and let's re-engage. I have a list of at least the 4 Interact clubs and the ones that are in operation now. So but Interact is the club for high school, middle schoolers to start being introduced to Rotary, and then to engage in Rotarians by coming to meetings on occasion, by doing joint projects with Rotarians, a real great opportunity for them to be able to see as you model what service above self really means. Just as an FYI, and Mark can speak to this or confirm this, my understanding is even the faculty advisor, who's going to obviously be a teacher or in the school system, which they have their own background checks, they still need to have our Rotary Youth Protection background check done. So in addition to the Rotarians that are involved with youth, that faculty advisor employed by the school system needs it as well. Oh, I didn't change the title here, but my apologies. But RILA is the next program I want to address. RILA is used to be called Rotary Youth Leadership Awards, now down to RILA. This past year, it was quasi-virtual. We had 5 locations around the district. The year before that, it was canceled. We do plan to go back to Virginia Tech, to the Skelton Center, to have that in the fall or in December. This is an opportunity for clubs to be able to sponsor students in your area to go down to have a 2-day conference with other youth and high school age kids across the district. I went to it when I was a junior in high school many decades ago, but it was my first introduction to Virginia Tech, which is where you can see it's my alma mater and I'm decked out in. But it was also one of my first introductions to Rotarians like Eric Adamson, who was a district governor, president of our club, as well as a vice president of Rotary International. Inez Rodenberg from the Rotary Club of Danville After Hours is our chairman for that program. And again, we will be using youth advocates, your area governors, to push out that information. Please make sure that you get that to your club leadership to be able to fund some students to go to that program. Well worth the time and the money. At that program, we have our 4-way speech contest, a 4-way test speech contest. And this is an opportunity for students to be able to earn some prize money. The top 3 contestants earn a cash award, hopefully used for scholarships. This is voted on by the students that attend RILA after a selection committee puts a couple speeches in front of them. And then if you were at district conference this past week, and you saw the winner of last year's 4-way test speech contest. And if there's nothing to give you hope about the future, those contestants really do. Really powerful thinking and speeches, and really bringing in how they're applying the 4-way test to their lives or to their situations. Another great opportunity out there that clubs can get involved with is the Rotary Youth Exchange. Charlotte Whitted at our Rotary Club of Abington is our chairman of that program. A club will sponsor either outbound students or inbound students. So if you have youth, it may be too late actually for this coming year, but if you have especially freshmen or sophomore that are interested in going abroad in their junior or senior year, please get in touch with Charlotte and see what how that would work. The sponsoring club needs to be able to nominate that student, and then perhaps even help with some of the funding. There are short and long-term exchanges. If you want to be host an inbound student, this is a great opportunity. My family has hosted 2, and they are exceptional experiences. And my son's going off to college next year, and my daughter, who's the one that's playing soccer here, sophomore, she's saying, we've got an empty room, let's fill it with a student. So she wants us another sister. So we are hoping to be able to do that as well. I know Kathy and Napier, they have done it, as well as many probably on this call or on this Zoom broadcast. The inbound or the sponsoring club for the inbound student is expected to sponsor about $100 stipend for that child to be able to, that youth to be able to do what they want, go to the movies, buy incidentals, things like that, so they can enjoy themselves. We do want to have like 3 host families. They do not all have to be Rotarians. They do have to go through background checks, but we want to have at least 3 host families so that a student, if there's not a fit, we know it's a short-term situation, but 2, that child then gets to experience that non-U.S. child gets to experience a variety of different ways Americans live. So if you're interested in either hosting inbound or sponsoring an outbound, please reach out to Charlotte. You can find all of her information on the district website. Last program, Youth and Peace in Action. I do not know what the future of this particular program holds. I do know that it is not going away necessarily. I'm not sure how interactive our district is going to be, but this is a zone project right now. Peter Kyle, who is our zone director, it is his brainchild and his passion. So we have participated in it this past year. The students that were participating in it are taking, I should say, virtual courses and getting a certification in peace. And then they are doing a on-site peace project. So one of the aspects of this is to think about Youth and Peace in Action is rethinking the way peace works. So even projects that we're doing locally in our backyard, how are we putting a peace spin on it? Teaching that peace does not have to mean that you have to go into the middle of an African warlord area and try to broker a peace. It's happening right here between our own divisiveness, and how can we bring peaceful situations here in our own communities, in our own district. And then we have our youth protection, and I'm going to turn it over to Mark. But again, here are the contacts. Here's my information. You can reach me on my cell phone. brettherbeck.rotary@gmail is the way that you can communicate with me. Of course, you can get me on the Rotary directory for our district. Inez Rodenberg, again, is our RILA chairman. Charlotte Whitted is our Rotary Youth Exchange chairman. And then I'm going to turn it over to Mark, who's our youth protection chairman. So I'll stick around. So if anybody has any questions, just put your hand up, and Kathy or Nina Beth will let me know, and I'll be happy to answer them. So thank you, Mark. I'll turn it over to you.
Good afternoon. So I'm glad everyone's here, and we are members who love to provide service, and service is provided to youth. So I don't know if anyone realized, but we have 1.2 million Rotarians, and we tend to serve over 300,000 youth. So Rotary International and our district are wanting to make certain that we're following the four-way test when we do that, and to ensure that we're being fair to all concerned, we are to have training. If you'll go to the next slide, please. We're to have training that will educate us all so that we can provide the environment for youth to participate in. Now, with regards to the background checks, with the school systems will require a background check to be provided by the Department of Social Services. But that's a different background check than what Rotary International requires. So if you're going to be participating with school aged youth, then you probably will have 2 background checks. Now, does everyone have to have a background check? No. Some members may determine, like Brett said, that youth are to be avoided because of their rambunctious behavior, but others will want to participate. And if you are participating in a manner where you are one-on-one contact with youth, or you have supervisory control over youth, then you're going to have to get a background check. And for those events that Brett discussed, specifically Interact, background checks are required, including the faculty member. So most clubs send someone to go to Interact clubs on a fairly regular basis. They're going to need to have a background check. If you're going to be transporting youth, then you should have a background check. But if you're not being left alone one-on-one with youth, it's not definitely required, but it is something that would be beneficial to get done. And again, our district and Rotary International do find that protecting our youth is the primary concern. So if you'll skip to the next slide, please. To show you how important it is, each of our district governors, before they become a district governor, they have to go through training. And they are provided with training so that they know what Rotary International requires, that they can pass that on to each club and the clubs to each member. And the clubs, those that are participating with the youth, need to realize that youth themselves can become sexually abusive or say inappropriate things. And we can't let that occur. We can't just sit back, laugh at it because it makes us nervous. We've got to stop that. And when you see something that doesn't seem right, there is a process to go through. If you see it, if you hear it, if you've been told, then you got to document it. And when you document it, that means that you're going to tell your club's hierarchy, president, secretary, youth coordinator. You're going to let them know. And then they will let myself know or other members on my team know. The approach is one of trauma informed. We're wanting to not have trauma, not let the youth experience trauma, because the trauma can affect their future. Being an attorney and serving as a guardian ad litem on the drug recovery court, lots and lots of individuals have had extreme trauma that if only someone had reported it, then it could have been stopped sooner. If you will skip to the next slide, please. So the training is not just for us who are participating, but it's also for the youth, for the families, and all volunteers. What does all volunteers mean? So those volunteers that are not members of Rotary, we cannot pass off what we are responsible for. So if we are having programs for children, then we bring in other organizations. They have to conform to our requirements. And again, it is those volunteers that are having a direct contact, more than just walking into a room. And they have to submit to a background check, which includes a criminal background check and references. The application discusses crimes that are going to prevent one from passing that background check. So if you're concerned, look at what is reported in that application. And we will have that application on our district site so that if you are concerned, don't get yourself embarrassed by not passing the background check. There is a process for reporting, and I started off by saying that you're to report to your club president, your youth protection club coordinator. It's to come to me and those on my committee, but we have to let the district governor know. And this has it has a bearing on whether or not we can do the youth Rotary Youth Exchange, we have to be certified. And if we're not reporting, in fact, the time frame, it's limited 72 hours to report issues from district governor to Rotary International. So the sooner that we can get it to our district governor, then our district governor can get it provided to Rotary International within 72 hours, and then they can perform an investigation. And that's where having our detail of what occurred help in the investigation. We've got to keep records. We're going to keep records of how our programs are successful. So we're going to keep records if incidences occur. Next slide, please. So there are different Rotary International resources, and the big one is the Youth Protection Guide. And that guide is 46 pages. Take a look at it. It will point out things that will allow you to know, should I report this? There is an online course that is offered. It's not long, but it will help you go through that process of understanding, hey, is this really an issue? Is this joke appropriate, or is this joke inappropriate? And there are issues with joking around. And that course will also tell you, how do you show affection, such as reaching out and shaking hands? Is that appropriate? Hugging someone from the side, but basically, if you're concerned, don't do it. But if you want to ask someone, can I shake your hand? You did a good job, then ask them and shake their hand. Next slide, please. So yes, volunteers have to be trained, they have to be screened, and specifically if they're going to be spending the night with young people, staying overnight. And that does occur. That occurs at RILA, and we can't let the youth be unsupervised. We have to have a reasonable number of youth per adult, and the adults have to check in, have to make sure nothing inappropriate is occurring. So the adults may take turns. That's something that you would learn in your training. They may take turns checking in, sitting outside of the dorm rooms or the rooms where the students stay. And I'll just give you an example. When I was in high school, I went to an event and we decided we were going to go out. It had gotten late enough. We thought that our teachers were asleep. We opened up the door, and lo and behold, there was the teacher sitting in a chair, expecting that her students might try to do something, and said, ask us what we were planning on doing. And as good students, we said we were just checking to see if anyone was in the hall. So we can't leave them unsupervised, and we can't leave students alone with an adult. So one child, one youth, one adult, that's not appropriate. It needs to be two students and one adult, or one student and two adults. So if you have someone interested, the clubs need to make sure that they're trained. And again, it's not just Rotary members, it's all adult volunteers. Next screen, please. So the ratios, Brett would be determining what the proper ratio of youth to adults may be based upon the numbers that he gets. And an adult is going to be assigned to specific youth. We can't let the youth get so many with one adult that the adult doesn't know who they're supervising. They've got to be able to keep track of them, and got to take shifts. And the youth are being arranged by sex and age being appropriate just as much as their sex. Next screen. So obviously we know that the youth need their own bed. Again, one volunteer and one youth in the same room is not appropriate, but we do have to supervise. Next screen. So we have to understand what is culturally appropriate. And this comes into play with the Rotary Youth Exchange, where the youth are coming from. Hugging even from the side may not be appropriate if the adult is male and the youth is female in some societies. Patting on the back or on the shoulder, shaking hands, and probably the best way of showing approval is to clap your hand or say, good job, without doing any touching. Next slide. So kind of skipped ahead and the positive reinforcement by saying good job and praising and encouraging. So the jokes, we don't want to have sexually inappropriate jokes. The jokes ought to be ones that everyone will find appropriate and not believe that they are interfering or invading one's sexual their sex. We don't want to do something that will make someone feel like we are being inappropriate or trying to groom someone, and that's what you've got to look into. So and look out for. Even though Rotarians tend to be good and true-hearted individuals, sometimes people want to get involved in our organization or other organizations because they want to have an opportunity to groom a child. And that's, if you don't know what I'm talking about, that online course will point out some ways that you need to look out for because they're not appropriate, they're more grooming. Next slide. So we want to meet with the youth in public places, and we want to be there where others are present. So if students are leaving a session and they stay back with a youth, with a volunteer presenter, then how can we be appropriate? Well, we can, as the volunteer, make sure that the door is open so that people out in the hall or other classrooms are able to look in and see, make certain that we're not standing in the way of the door and the youth, letting the youth have first option of leaving. And if we're meeting in a home, in someone's home or other private location, then it's got to be approved in advance. So as part of the youth exchange, when there's a host family, those host families are provided with information on what's approved, what is culturally appropriate, and possibly they're may be left alone with that exchange student. Their own children may be out of the home, their spouse may be out of the home, and it's just that youth exchange student and the host Rotarian. So that's something that's normal in a family, and that's the reason that Rotary encourages more than one host family per youth exchange student. Next slide. So when we have electronic communications, texting, Facebook, we need to make certain that our communication is not, for instance, me one-on-one with a youth, because that, whether I'm doing something inappropriate or not, I need to be thinking about that and make certain that if I am having a conversation by electronic means with the youth, that I'm involving another volunteer or the participants' parents or guardian. The more people we can communicate with, the more that we're being transparent and letting everyone see what's going on. Trying to put someone on one-on-one, that is how grooming starts. So if there is private communication between one counselor, one advisor, host parent, well, they get prior approval. And yes, again, back to youth exchange, the host parent may text their youth exchange student, and so they're going to have training, and that's going to be approved in advance. Next screen. So is it appropriate to give a gift to just one individual? Well, it may be, again, if we get prior approval. If we let them know, we let the parents or guardian know what type of gift we're going to give. Now, there may be awards or recognition, and we had that at the district conference with the speech writing, and the key was it was in a group setting. So giving that award, that was fine. It wasn't coming from one person, it was coming from our district to that one youth. And we can give gifts to more than one youth, and that's appropriate. That's better to do it that way. We're not giving first place prize to all the youth participants. I know that some of you kind of laugh at that, but we can give gifts to all participants to encourage them and thank them for their participation. Next slide. So, sexual activity. Do all of you understand what sexual activity is? It may not be sexual intercourse, but sexual activity, which can be touching, can be using inanimate objects and role playing, that's sexual abuse. Sexual assault is actually touching. And understand this, someone under 18 years old cannot consent to touching. So it's not only not allowed in our district or Rotary International, it is a crime in Virginia. And if it is seen, it is to be reported. And it's not just reporting to law enforcement, it's doing the same chain so that it makes its way up to the district governor, and the district governor can let Rotary International know what's going on. So we're still going to be tracking by writing down what we saw, keeping a record of it. But law enforcement might come in and do an investigation. And if they do the investigation, we're not to interfere. So what's coercion? Making someone feel bad if they don't let you do what you're asking them, telling them that you might do something to them or their family, that you may make threats that pressure them to allow that act to occur, that you may show pornographic material or even stick figures that may be in a sex act. That's coercion. We had someone come to district conference and talk about sex trafficking and how that it's not just females that are being trafficked, that it is male and female. And we need to make certain that we're not letting youth get into a situation where that could occur to them. Now, stalking can be, I send a text and the youth says, I don't want to get a text. And I continue to send text. So I'm doing something, I'm interfering with them in a way that they don't want. Indecent exposure. If you go to the restroom, you need to make sure that you're not exposing yourself to other youth in the restroom. Next slide. So, as I said, someone under 18 can't consent. So they may be acting, the youth may act like they're an adult. They may dress like they're an adult. They may wear clothes, makeup that makes them look like an adult, but they're not. So just keep that in mind. And it ought to be pretty clear, we shouldn't be asking youth for sexual acts. We shouldn't be looking at them in a way that makes them feel that we're trying to look through their clothes. We shouldn't whistle. Everyone should remember advertisements where someone walks by and the people are working on a building and the person that's walking by is chewing double mint chewing gum, but they start whistling and hooting. Well, that's not appropriate. We need to make sure that we're keeping our distance because we don't want to brush up against someone. If it's accidental, it's accidental, but we need to be aware of our surroundings. Next slide. So I've kind of gone over some of this. We shouldn't be trying to find time to get a youth alone with us. And if you see that occurring, well, if you're not watching other youth, then you can hang around, right? That's a way to prevent it from progressing any farther. And if that adult leader adult volunteer is not thinking of trying to have alone time with the youth, they're going to be more than happy that you bailed them out of a situation. That you're there, again, not one youth, one adult, one youth, two adults. Don't keep secrets. Don't say, hey, I'll tell you this, but don't tell the other youth, because that makes them think that you're providing special attention to them, and that's a grooming technique. Again, if the youth do not want to be around you, respect that. We don't understand their reasoning, but their reasoning may be as simple as, hey, they want to hang out with the other youth. So let them do that. That's what we're trying to do in providing services for youth, is doing that. Next slide. So youth do sometimes use electronic means to be inappropriate with their behavior. And I can give you some examples of cases that I have been involved in, that in girls' bathroom, some of the girls ahead of time knew that they were going to have a fight. And so they had one of the girls with their cell phones having cameras, and they were filming it. Well, so if we see cameras coming out, and if it's same-sex adult leader with youth, and we see cell phones coming out, we need to tell the youth to put their cell phones up. Because if the youth are filming another youth in a state of undress, that is a crime. And we ought to anticipate it. They don't understand it. Their reasoning abilities, oh, I'm just taking pictures or a film of a fight, but exposing someone's private parts is a crime. And so when you say, hey, put the phone up, you just take the extra step and you say, hey, this is the reason that you need to put that phone back up, because you can't film somebody that they may become in a state of undress. Just looking out, thinking about things like that. And if you explain it, they're going to thank you, especially when they realize that, hey, if I'm not stopped, then I might be on a sex offender registry as a youth. And they don't want that to occur uncertain. So we need to, again, as I've said, document and let the parents, guardians, and district leadership know what's going on. If we determine that a youth participant's to be removed, we need to inform their parents or guardians. And this has occurred at Ryla in the past, where one youth decided that they wanted to leave. They called someone did show up, whether they were the ones that were called. They did show up and were there when the youth got into the vehicle. One of our adult leaders, having been trained, wisely got in front of the vehicle and took a picture of the person and their tag, and then explained to that individual driving that vehicle that if you leave with this youth in the car, it will be reported as an abduction. And they made the youth get out. So a youth being unhappy for whatever reason can get themselves into a situation that's not not appropriate because their parents or guardians aren't aware who they're leaving with. And the parent or guardian thought they were at a Rotary function. And how does that look if they had gone with someone and now our district has to explain, hey, we don't know where your child went to, but we were responsible. Next slide. So when we do programs with other organizations, we need to have an agreement with that organization, that organization is going to follow our rules. Now, they may have rules that are very similar, but we're going to have them follow our rules. Otherwise, we ought to let that organization have their own program for the youth and do it separate from Rotary. And we want the youth and the parents and the guardians to know about these other organizations. Because when we present something, they may think, oh, this is Rotary. I'm familiar with Rotary, but now we've got another organization involved. So we need to let them know so that they can decide if they want their child, their ward to participate with some other organization. And that other organization, we need to make sure that they have liability insurance, which indemnifies your club and our district. And they can do that as an additional insurer. So if an issue develops with that other organization, well, we can modify the arrangement, suspend it, or end our relationship. And if misconduct occurs, or we believe it has occurred, then we go through the same reporting process. Next slide. So I'm repeating a whole lot because it's important to know that we've got to report the allegations to the district governor, and the district governor has 72 hours to report it to Rotary International. And our district governor wants to have the information. So if we let things wait, because I'm not sure about this. Well, if we're not sure, maybe we ought to ask. So we're not doing anything wrong by saying, all right, here's what occurred. Is this an issue? And you take it to your club, you take it to youth protection, and it goes to the district governor. The district governor can say, hey, this isn't really something that we need to have as a concern, but thank you for having reported it. The district governor can go ahead and report it to Rotary International, and Rotary International says, hey, thank you, we agree with you, it's not an issue. But what can occur? Well, the Rotary International General Secretary, they can take away our certification so that those clubs that love hosting youth exchange, youth from other countries, we won't be able to. So not reporting, we can lose that. It may be that the issue or the result of the issue is, hey, you can stay in Rotary, but maybe it's not good for you to be around youth for a while. And we'll provide training so that you understand what you did and how it could have been perceived as not being appropriate, or it can go all the way to termination of the member. And that member, if they're terminated, then that record is kept, so they're probably terminated from then on, unless they show Rotary International a reason that they can join some other club. But we can't just say in our club, oh, you're out of our club, we're not going to report it, you're out of our club, and then that person go to another club and do the same thing. It needs to be reported. And during the investigation, the first thing is that you make sure that the youth participant or youth, that they are in a safe environment. And we don't want to make the youth feel uncomfortable in reporting something that they found to be uncomfortable. We want to support them. And we want to listen to what they say. And if it's an issue that may present as possibly being a crime, well, law enforcement needs to be involved. And we're not to interfere. So next slide. So we need to have responsible compassion. Support the youth who are affected and their families or peers. We're not to allow the person that's alleged to have violated those policies, our policies, to have contact with young people in a Rotary setting until the matter is resolved. So if it takes a while for the matter to get resolved, that individual or individuals are not to be in a setting where youth are. And if someone admits to, is convicted, or determined to have engaged in abuse or harassment of youth, they're to be banned from participating from youth. And again, they may be banned from being a Rotary Club member. So just to go back to say what are unacceptable verbal or written interactions, calling someone names, discussing sexual encounters, adults asking youth to keep secrets, cursing, discriminatory or sexual jokes, shaming or belittling, harsh language that might threaten or humiliate youth. And that's something that we all need to be aware of. That if you say something to me as an adult with the experiences that I have, your remarks might not be harsh to me, but to a youth that hasn't had those same experiences of life, they may be harsh, may make them feel uncomfortable. And never comment on somebody's body or how they're developing. You might think, oh boy, that dress looks nice on you. Find some other way to say, aren't you appropriately dressed? Thank you. Are there any questions?
Yes, Mark, I've got a question in the chat that came from Reverend Matt Rhodes, and it's regarding supervision other than in a host family situation. So the question here is there a requirement in place in Rotary training that two adults who are supervising youth cannot be related? He's had training through the Episcopal Church training that includes a prohibition on allowing related adults having, let's see, chaperoning, watching youth, et cetera, to prevent the possibility of one person covering for their relative.
Well, I don't think that Rotary has something saying that two adults from the same family cannot supervise. But think about it, if that did occur, are you going to be responsible to the youth, or are you going to be responsible to your spouse? So it might be better to break apart a family, two adults from a family, and have them team up with other adults, because our goal is not to put the youth in a position that they could feel threatened, that the other adult might say, hey, don't say that about my husband, or don't say that about my wife. And then now we've made something harsh. They don't understand it. So when in doubt, think of how the youth would feel. Protect the youth.
Okay, here's another question. This has come from Eddie Long. How would that work if you have an exchange student that live in the family?
So again, there's training provided in advance. There are, with the youth exchange, there's extra training that they go through because they have to learn what is appropriate for that youth in their country. So something that might be appropriate here in the US may be inappropriate in the country that the youth is coming from. So they get extra training. They're a family. They're spending their time in a host family as a part of that family. So we understand that there may be times that that youth is alone with an adult member of that family. So that's going to occur. What Rotary International tries to do is break up that time so that it's split, if possible, between more than one host family, so that now when they get to that second family, if they felt like something occurred inappropriate, they can tell that second family. Or if they get to the second family and they have a good relationship with the first family, the youth can go back and say, hey, at my new host family, this is occurring. I'm concerned about this. And it may be appropriate, and it's just something that the youth is concerned about. But having, we now have more adults that can listen and take and write down what the youth is presenting that occur. Because again, youth may say things, they may perceive things that are really not inappropriate, but to them, they are. So getting them to report that and having an opportunity to explain what has occurred and what the process is might help the youth and the host exchange families, but they receive training in advance of the youth coming.
And we have a comment from Tom Duvall. Tom has been involved with Youth Exchange in the past, and he just said he wants to add that inappropriate jokes, language, etc., can also apply to race, religion, gender that are not sexual, or other personal attributes.
That's 100% correct.
A question from Michael Williams. With respect to transportation, is it RI's policy that 2 adults need to be in a vehicle when transporting youth?
No, yes and no. So if you're transporting multiple youth and you're taking them to one location where all the youth get out, that's fine. You got multiple youth to one adult volunteer. If you are dropping them off along the way and you get down to one youth and one adult, again, the policy is that that's not to occur. We're trying to protect the youth. So maybe you have to have an extra adult volunteer join in for that last drop off. Now,
and what if you're just transporting one youth? You need to have another person? I could just
so that's the policy, but if again, youth, a situation there, RLI one year in Blacksburg, there was a snowstorm that we didn't have enough four-wheel drive transportation of adults that had a background check. Well, they got to go home. Sometimes we have to do things that are not what our desire is, and our desire would be to have only those that have background checks and not one youth left with one adult. But if that occurs, then definitely the adult can contact their club and say, hey, I had to take Johnny home. He was the last one. How about you contact his family and let them know the reason, and then they can say, hey, it was no problem. Johnny said you acted appropriate. We're just appreciative that you got him home. And now you've had at least some type of check done on what you did. But I mean, we have to do what we have to do to get the youth back home.
Glenn Martin, who is on here in a past RLI chair, asked if he could make a few comments.
Sure.
On the topic of transportation, when we would drive folks or students home, I would contact my wife to have her meet me at the high school at the drop-off. So when we're down to the last student, there's 2 adults, or I might have another Rotarian. So there are things that you can do in advance so you are not left one-on-one. A couple other things, when we ran RILA, even though the legal age is 18, we would suggest that we handle all youth as if they were under the age of 18, because there might be 18 and 19-year-olds at the conference or still in high school. Even though that's the legal age, we handle all youth as if they were under the age of 18. In other words, don't be inappropriate with regardless of their age. And then the other thing that we encourage folks to do, if we do witness something that's inappropriate, I always encourage them to make immediate notes. Get a piece of paper and write down the time, the place, and your observations. So when you do have to report it, you'll have those notes readily available.
Yes, that is correct. And actually, there are several places that Rotary International will refer to youth as being 21 and younger. So you're absolutely correct.
Another comment from Matt Rhodes. We're talking about the transportation question with one-on-one. A recommendation is to have the youth on the phone with their parent the entire drive, if it's only a single adult with them, so that they have some kind of other communication going on.
That's a good idea.
A couple other comments that have gone throughout the session. People are asking, could they get copies of the presentations and where would we be able to do this? We will be posting the slides. And Brett, if you could send Nina Beth your slides, we will post those on the district training page that's on the district website. We have been recording this session, and we will have a link to the recording on that same page, the training page. So anyone who missed this session and would like to view it, or if you want to go back and view any of the other questions or information provided here, you can view that from the link on the training page. And that'll be up in a couple of days afterwards. Aaron Van Allen, you have your hand raised.
Yes, ma'am. I just wanted to say, Kathy, to point out to everybody that there will be an opportunity at the President-elect Training Seminar coming up in a couple of weeks to where folks could answer questions on this topic. So keep an eye out for that, but there will be an opportunity for that as well.
Thank you, Aaron. Yes,
Yes,
that
ma'am.
will be available. Definitely will at President-elects. Do we have any other questions? Anyone want to raise their hand or join in the chat? I don't see any new questions and I'm not seeing any raised hands. So Brett and Mark, thank you both very, very much for the presentation this evening. This is a serious topic, one that we all should take seriously because we want to enjoy and protect our youth. So thank you both very much for your service to our youth. And again, we will have lots of the questions, we'll have the slides and the link on the training page that's on the district website. And you can access that at any time in the next several days. Give us a couple days to get all that on there. Right. Well, thank you all. We appreciate it. It's been a good session.
Thank you.
Everyone, have a good evening. Goodbye.
Thank you.